Hello, hello. There we
There
go.
we go.
How are you both doing today?
Doing okay.
Good, good, good.
John, it's good to see you.
Good to see you.
Happy New Year to you.
Happy New Year to both of you. We're already almost the 12th of the way through it.
I know. Just keeps flying by.
Oh, it does.
Anything new in your life, John? Or joyful or
Just, just trying to stay busy and doing fairly well at it. So retirement feels good.
When did you officially retire?
In September.
Well, congratulations.
Thank you. Every day is Saturday.
That sounds beautiful.
The only way I know what day it actually is what's next ready in my pillbox. So today had the W, so I know it's Wednesday.
That's great.
The T's and the S's throw me though. Oh,
looks like we've got a fair number of people who are already wanting to testify. Wonder if we should extend public comment a little bit. What do you think, John?
yeah, I'm not seeing. Is that in the chat?
It's in the chat, yeah.
Okay, oh, there we are.
Yeah.
I think it would not be a bad idea, but I was just noticing the timing on the agenda here, and
it's a little tight.
Yeah.
Okay. Hi, Christopher.
So there, just as we're waiting to go here, I think we had a draft of bylaws earlier, but I can't find them. Did I see a draft of the bylaws previously that was circulated?
Probably, but we can make sure to send it out
Okay.
again. Taj, would you be able to help us with that?
Yes, absolutely.
Thank you.
Thanks, Taj. And then for both, I see Taj and Sean are on here. I need to make sure we get everybody sending me stuff on the implementation board email. I'm getting some on my live.com, some on the implementation board. So if we can ask people, maybe send something out that asks people and staff to send to my, I think it's IB4. Thank you. And then that keeps the record straight and all of that.
Okay. Hey, Sarah.
Hi, Sarah.
Sima?
Yeah.
Hey, good afternoon. It's Gordon.
Hey, Gordon. Good to see you.
Good day. Yeah, I'm chairing a meeting. Like my governance committee meets. My board meets at 3:30, so I've got a hard stop at 3:29. I apologize for that.
Gotcha. No, of course, I understand. While we're waiting for a sufficient number of board members, I do want to note that we have quite a number of people signing up in public comment already before even starting the session. And Taj, Paula is in the trying to get moved over.
1 second.
I'm noticing that Christopher Ross is reprising the Hulk role.
My staff said for bad meeting or big meetings, bring this.
Everybody needs one of those.
Really?
Right? I want the whole bodysuit, but like, don't give me to the head.
Right, right.
Hi, Juanita, Paula. Glad y'all were able to make it.
Hey, Nate, if you've seen Joy Coy's movie, I just hope those boxing gloves weren't stolen. So
I got it when I was in the Senate, the U.S. Senate, during healthcare reform. He gave it to me. Keep up the fight during a rally.
all right, love it.
Taj, are you going to be the one managing public comment, or will that be Sean today?
I will be managing public comment today.
Okay. Do you? Oh, okay. You know, actually, gosh, it looks like Owen had to became ill and is unable to do his presentation today. I am going to plan on extending public comment a little bit so that we can accommodate all the our community a little bit, unless anyone has objections. Okay. And I'll adjust that in the agenda today. All right. How are we doing, Taj? Are we about ready to get started?
Yes, we can go ahead and get started.
Okay. All right, we have 8 folks. Pastor Kerry Anderson, I think, is in the public one. If we can pull him over, that'd be great. Hi, Michael. Good to see you. Okay. Well, Taj, whenever you are ready, why don't we get started? And I will plan on increasing public comment by 10 minutes to accommodate as many as we can.
All right, let's go ahead and get started. Simha, will you open up the meeting for us?
Yes, absolutely. Let me know when it's
You're good to go.
okay. Great. Well, welcome everyone, both board members, staff, and community. I'd like to call this regular meeting of the KCRHA Implementation Board to order. We start by grounding our work in our theory of change, which is if we create a homeless response system that centers people with lived experience, then we will be able to focus on responding to needs and eliminating inequities in order to end homelessness for all. This is a hybrid meeting, as all of our meetings will be going forward. So there's a physical location as well as virtual access. And I want to thank Mayor Nancy Backus and the City of Auburn for letting us borrow their chambers again today. Taj, would you please take the roll for us?
Sure. Kerry Anderson,
Present.
Nate Caminos,
Present.
Paula Carvalho,
Here.
John Shomanek,
Here.
Ben Maritz. Okay. Juanita Spotted Elk.
Here.
Okay. Thank you. Gordon McHenry Jr.
Present.
Thank you. Damian Patnaud. Okay. Michael Ramos.
Here.
Thank you. Simha Reddy.
Here.
Sarah Rankin
Here.
and Christopher Ross.
Present.
Thank
Thank you.
you.
Thank you, Taj. It appears we do have quorum. Damien had let me know just before the meeting he had a bit of a emergency at home, so won't be able to attend. We may drop in later if we can. Let's keep an eye out for Ben. I think he had been planning to attend today. But we do have quorum, so we will begin. I'd like to begin by acknowledging that King County is located on the unceded traditional land of the Coast Salish peoples. We honor this land and its people, past and present, and we are committed to directing funding and resources to organizations led by and in support of Native and Indigenous people. So at every meeting, we reserve time for public comment. And if you'd like to provide comments, please add your name and the city you're from to the chat, and Taj will call on you in order after the consent agenda. I will note that we have significantly more people signing up for public comment than is typical, and we will do our best to accommodate by extending public comment by an additional 10 minutes. Next on our consent agenda is the approval of the minutes from our December 2022 implementation board meeting. Is there a motion to approve those minutes?
I'll make a motion to approve the minutes.
Thank you,
I
John.
second.
Thank you,
I
Sarah.
second.
Appreciate it. We have a motion and a second. All those in favor? Oh,
Aye.
Gordon? Oh,
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Aye.
any opposed? Okay, the minutes are approved.
Oh, Sima,
Yes, please.
I was a little slow on my raising my hand. Point of clarification or correction. I think the minutes show me as both present and excused, and that's probably an error. I do recall that I was present.
Oh, okay. Thank you, Gordon.
Maybe just that one correction.
Can we make a motion to amend the minutes then?
Sorry about that, folks.
No, thank you for pointing it out, Gordon. I missed that myself.
I would just make a motion to approve it as amended with that change.
Thank you. I'll
Seconded.
second that.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
And Christopher, I'm sorry, I missed your hand being up.
No, it's okay. I just put up. So Ben is messaging me. He's actually in the wrong meeting. Is it possible to move him over like you did the other, like one of the other board members?
I wonder if Ben is in executive session.
No, I'm seeing him over in the panel.
Oh, okay.
On attendees.
Oh, great. There he is.
I will move them.
Thank you.
Excellent. Taj, if you can note that Ben is present as well. Thank you. All right, folks. Welcome, Ben, and everyone else. I do want to make a slight note on our agenda. Just as we were beginning, it appears that one of our staff members has taken ill and won't be able to provide our presentation on measuring unsheltered homelessness that was scheduled for 2:55 today. We will move that to a future meeting and hope he feels better soon. That will allow us a little bit more time for public comment. We may not get to everyone on this list, but we will do our very best. We have, let's go ahead and begin. We now have 20 minutes for public comment. If you wish to comment and have not already added your name and city to the chat box or sign up in person, please do so now. Each person will have a maximum of 2 minutes to comment. And we ask that the comments be related to today's agenda. We'll start with the people on Zoom and then move to the people in the room, if any. Public comment
Okay,
is now open.
thank you, Simha. The first person that we have for public comment is David McCann. David, I will tell you in a second when you can speak. You have access to speak. Go ahead.
Right, good afternoon. My name is Dave McCann. I've been working and volunteering in homelessness since 2010 in Seattle with Plymouth Housing, Fair Start, and Low Housing Income Institute. And I'm an ex-Amazon exec who has volunteer coordinated 400 citizens to build and fund tiny homes. And today I'm alarmed at the 5-year plan that you've published, which on page 22 calls out that there is a lack of 19,440 beds in the county. You then announce that your #1 goal is to urgently reduce the number of unsheltered homelessness, and Lehigh can stand up a tiny home village in 90 days at a cost to the taxpayer of $37,000. On your plan, you talk about funding 750 small housing units which are not tiny homes, at a cost of $50 million. And on page 28 of your plan, you fund $0 for tiny homes. So I cannot reconcile it is urgent to get people off the streets. We can stand up a tiny home village in 8 weeks, and the county has published a plan providing zero funding for tiny homes, when in actual fact, Councillor Andrew Lewis has called for 1,000 tiny homes. We know that Mayor Bruce Harrell and Governor Inslee have been to the Hope Factory, but interestingly, Dow Constantine and Mark Dones have been painfully absent, and yet we're spinning out villages every month. So I ask the organisation here to redesign your plan and better use your 50 million and stand up another 50 tiny home villages at a far lower.
David, I'm so sorry to interrupt, but you're at time.
Thank you.
Okay, the next person that we have up for public comment is Jane Bolerjack. Jane, I am going to promote you as panelist, and I will let you know when you can speak. You have the floor, Jan.
Hi, my name is Jan Bolerjack. I'm the pastor at Riverton Park United Methodist in Tukwila. And I want to promote the funding of tiny home villages. We're the latest village to be settled as of December 1st. And I just want to tell you, I had 30 to 50 campers on the property here for years prior to this. We moved them off to the side of the property and we brought in the tiny home village. And the difference with these folks has been amazing. Now that they have access to services, their dignity has gone up, their attitudes, their appreciation of life and of the homes. It's great to see. There are so many benefits to getting them out of tents and into homes. But I still have 24 people sleeping on the floor in my building that don't have access to those services. We need more tiny homes. Now, I also have a project on the property that's for affordable housing, and it's taken 5 years to get that project started with Homestead Land Trust. There will be 18 homes built. It will be a wonderful project, but it's taken forever, and all these people have been living in tents until then. I also want to tell you the story of one of my campers that was here for a couple of years, didn't make it to the tiny homes. He was in a tent for a long time. He actually was found dead under a bridge of a drug overdose. And I just can't imagine what it would have been like if we could have gotten him into a tiny home prior.
Jan, I'm so sorry to interrupt you, but you're at time. Thank you. Okay. The next person who would like to make a public comment is Sarah Robbins from the Coalition on Homelessness. Let's see. Sarah, you have the floor.
Sorry, didn't realize I was muted. Good afternoon, members of the Implementation Board. My name is Sarah Robbins, and I'm the Policy Manager at the Seattle-King County Coalition on Homelessness. I'm here to provide public comment on the 5-year plan. I want to start by thanking everyone that worked on this plan. It's clear that much time and thoughtfulness went into this document. We are still working our way through the draft, preparing comments, including prioritization. Nevertheless, we want to share a high-level initial response to the plan. We appreciate the clear emphasis on 2 critical areas where new and sustained resources are essential: the need for more deeply affordable housing and significant new and sustained resources that are necessary to ensure that this region does not continue to leave people outside. The Coalition has long advocated for significant investments that match the need for both emergency and temporary housing, and for permanent housing and long-term subsidies and support. We appreciate the plan's emphasis on the critical need to invest in the homeless service and housing workforce. We will not be able to maintain or expand crisis response system or housing and services unless workers are compensated adequately and agencies can attract and maintain a skilled and stable workforce. We expect to continue to work closely with our members and all public funders on both of these crucial sets of investments. However, we note that the plan itself is very high level and does not address crucial matters of implementation. We ask that this implementation board and other governing bodies ensure that there is good oversight and true partnership to determine how these strategies will be prioritized, funded, and implemented. Thank you.
Thank you, Sarah. All right. 1 second here. The next person that we have up for public comment is going to be Kate Martin. 1 second, please. All right. Kate, you have the floor.
Sorry, there's a thing coming from somebody.
Okay, I'm here, Kate Martin. I just wanted to make some obvious kind of high-level comments. I know that you were given the charge to solve homelessness with housing. And so I think you were destined for failure from the moment that that was determined. I have been a volunteer addressing homelessness for several years. I'm also a housing provider that has my lived experience of helping people that are addicted, trying to get them unaddicted. And I've been using the housing first strategy, and it's been an absolute failure. I posted an article in the chat that I hope all of you will read about how to, the secret to ending homelessness. It was published today on Public. And it's essential that you take a look at that. The situation is largely a drug addiction situation. And we have a tremendous amount of mental illness caused by the drug addiction and occurring previously before the addiction. Again, I think you're destined for failure. We must address drug addiction and treatment for drug addiction, and that must be forced on the people, as you will read from this first person experience written in this article, The Secret to Ending Homelessness. We are not going to ever solve homelessness with housing. And this is a strategy that has been proven a failure already for all the years that we've been trying it.
Kate, I'm so sorry to interrupt, but you're at time. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay. The next person that we have up for public comment is Barb Oliver. Let's see. Barb, you have the floor. Oh, there she goes. Barb, we can't hear you. You're muted. Thank you.
Okay, there we go. Good afternoon, everybody. My name is Barb Oliver. I'm Director of Operations for Sound Foundations Northwest, in charge of the Hope Factory, where we build about 90% of the tiny homes. Today, you're going to hear a lot about the why tiny homes are important. I want to talk to you about the how. We are now in year 2 of a 4-year plan to get every single homeless person in King County a roof over their head, a lock on their door, and food in their stomach at the cost of less than 2 hotels, $47,454. I'm not going to go over the specifics of the plan, but I will put our link to that's on our website so you can all see the specifics of that. Part of this is the fact that we starting next month, we'll be employing people from the Seattle Conservation Corps, homeless and formerly homeless people, to literally build their own homes. We're very excited about that. Okay. Ben Moritz, who's on your committee, built with us just last week. And so if you want an experience from him, talk to him about that. The last thing that I would like to do is this. I have invited KCRHA to the Hope Factory on 8 separate occasions. On the 8th occasion, Ann Mertens, your Director of Communications, said to me, and I quote, "We have absolutely no desire to tour the Hope Factory." And my challenge to you is not only come and tour, but actually come and build with us. Ask Ben how much fun it is and how much good we're doing. I yield the rest of my time. Thank you so much for doing what you're doing. Let's end homelessness together.
Thank you, Barb. Okay. The next person that we have up for public comment is Bill Curlin Hackett. Bill, you have the floor.
Hi, Bill Curlin, Hackett, Interfaith Task Force on Homelessness. We recently transitioned our vehicle residency outreach scofflaw program to University Heights. What that means is the Interfaith Task Force is now free to spend all of our time on being advisor and consultant and helper to RHA on vehicle residency. I'll be presenting this to the vehicle residency work group, but I'm also saying it to you. It's not going to cost you anything for us to come help you. And with all the great staff that have been hired, none of them have any experience doing vehicle residency outreach. So we're going to walk into this because it's in the 5-year plan. It's half the unsheltered homelessness in vehicles. It's a war zone out there between jurisdictional craziness and just lack of remedies. So I'll just leave it there. I will yield the rest of the time, but we need to address this head on. Right now, it is a mess and it is not helping our numbers or the people on the streets. So thanks.
Thank you, Bill. Our next person up for public comment is Amanda. I apologize to the IB. We do not have a last name listed here. Amanda, you have the floor.
Thank you and good afternoon. My name is Amanda D. Fisher, and I'm a resident of Seattle doing work in the homelessness space. I'd like to just share some comments on the 5-year plan. It's clear that a lot of thought and effort has gone into this plan. And while this plan provides gaps analysis, cost, general outcomes at the surface level, outside of number of units needed, there's no actual call out to how many units RHA is holding itself accountable to given its current capacity, or baseline numbers to measure progress against for all other strategies in the plan. For example, if there's 39 cities in King County, what's the number of interlocal agreements you currently have, and how many more are you holding yourselves reasonably accountable for, given your current capacity? Another example is the strategy for success to improve severe weather response system. You say a measure is an increase in severe weather response options in subregions, but what does that currently look like, and how much of an increase do you anticipate achieving through this work? I'm sure that KCRHA requires its funding recipients to put numbers behind their projected outcomes and would expect to see this information included in its own plan, at least for the first 12 to 24 months, to ensure accountability initially and to guide adjustment for years 3 to 5. Thank you.
Thank you, Amanda. I believe we have one more time for one more public comment. 1 second. Our next person that we have up for public comment is Lisa Dugard. Lisa, you have the floor.
Good afternoon, everyone. I'm co-executive director at the Public Defender Association. We operate the co-lead program and project manage lead. We've been working with the King County Regional Homelessness Authority since July on the state right-of-way encampment resolution work. I am here to provide generally very strong positive reaction to the draft plan. Like others, still working our way through some suggested fine-tuning or revisions on some key points that are very important to our work, which focuses incidentally on people who are exposed to the criminal legal system. However, despite that it is not, a perfect document, and there will never be a perfect document, there are several critical ways in which this gets it very right, and in this way provides hope and I think realistic expectation of profound impact. The main way in which this is true is that it accurately approximates the scale of the system development, complex multi-layered investments and resources that will be needed to make anything close to the kind of difference that everyone expects in the coming years with respect to workforce, but also with respect to many different kinds of resources that work for different populations and that braided together stand a realistic chance of efficacy. So I think it'll be very important for everyone who is still in the fight for impact to affirm that this is the right scale, that these are the kinds of resources that are needed. It requires courage to name that, and I'm here to express our organizational appreciation that the authority is aiming at that level. Thank you.
Thank you, Lisa.
Right. The Taj, can you just double check? Is there anyone at the Auburn City Hall
I
in
did.
person?
I did confirm, and there is not.
Okay. First, I want to thank everybody who's provided public comments already, and I'm grateful we had the time to extend at least to get some more comments in. For those of you who didn't get a chance to comment but wish to, Taj, if we can include a link to sort of the feedback session, that'd be fantastic. We'd really appreciate people weighing in. So it is 2:30 now. The implementation board is going to go into executive session for 30 minutes, returning at 3 p.m. As a reminder, before convening an executive session, the presiding officer of a governing body shall publicly announce the purpose for excluding the public from the meeting place and the time when the executive session will be concluded. The executive session may be extended to a stated later time by announcement of the presiding officer, that'd be me. The announced purpose of excluding the public must be entered into the minutes of the meeting required by RCW 42.30.035. So all IB members will leave the main meeting to convene privately regarding performance review of Mark Dones at now 2:30. The executive session will be over at 3 p.m. We will continue the full meeting at 3 p.m. For IB members, please use the supplemental Zoom link that Taj circulated previously to access the executive link. Please let her know if you have any problems accessing that link. Right. To the community, we will return in about 30 minutes while we step into executive, after we finish our executive session. Thank you. All right, IB members, we will see you in the other session here.
Simha, you're muted.
Thanks. To the community, to the others on the call, we are extending our executive session to a maximum of additional 20 minutes to 3:20. This would still keep us on agenda item as our next session measuring unsheltered homelessness will not be taking place today. We may return earlier than that, but executive session is extended till 3:20. Thanks for your patience, everyone.
Hey, Taj.
Hello.
All right, it's 3:20. We are returned from executive session. Thank you to everyone for your patience. Really, I greatly appreciate that. We're going to move on to the next items on our agenda. Mark, do you have any brief CEO updates before we discuss the 5-year plan?
Not given how behind time we are, and I know that the 5-year plan discussion is important. I don't think there's anything in particular that I want to belabor at this point. I will say things are okay, and I'm really looking forward to the process to finalize the plan. I think, you know, it was helpful to hear the feedback from folks today. It's been helpful to get feedback from our different stakeholders and funders. And I think that it bodes well for, I think, where the community can go.
Thank you, Mark. Well, I'd like to try and facilitate discussion among us about the 5-year plan. We've all had time to review the draft, provide feedback to Mark and their staff. But to begin with, I thought it might be actually helpful for Mark to share with us a little bit about the feedback they've already received from various stakeholders and how that might affect their approach moving forward in terms of the 5-year plan.
Sure. So, you know, I think that the majority of the feedback has fallen into two, you know, sort of discrete, oh my gosh, I'm really tired today, types. The first is feedback that's really oriented along the person who called in and gave comment that was like, hey, I want to know how many of X are going to be produced, like, you know, like build in the same level of accountability that you would build in for folks that you fund, which I think is very appropriate. And that kind of feedback has been, you know, consistent. And I think that, you know, what we have done thus far in the draft plan is essentially do a whole lot of modeling work. And I think that, like, you know, there are critical questions now about, okay, so like, what are you going to do over 12 months, over 24 months, right? Some of that information we tried to answer with those sort of 24-month action lists, but in hearing the feedback, what I've really landed on with my team is like, those aren't hitting the mark, right? Like they are not getting to the level of detail and the kind of like what's like the specificity that both funders and the general public want. So that's one type of feedback that I think we've heard consistently and want to be really responsive to. The other type of feedback that I think we've heard consistently is just around like the length of document, clarity, like how do I get through this, right? And in that space, you know, what we've heard is less about, hey, this is the wrong stuff, and more about like how, like, this doesn't feel communicated as crisply as folks are going to want to digest it, and not everyone is going to want to read 170 pages. So like, what about those folks, right? And on that front, we have engaged no one who works here as a designer. So we've engaged a firm to help us do some design work and to help build out collateral materials of all different kinds of links and types that can be translated appropriately, can be web-based, can be physical assets, et cetera, that are going to help people get to that sort of meat of like, what are the brass tacks? What are the fundamentals being proposed, and what are the outcomes that will happen if this is approved? And I had an opportunity to connect with that team who's helping us do that work earlier this week, and really sort of say to them, hey, because initially we had discussed the development of that kind of collateral really after the plan was approved, right? And had an opportunity to say to them, hey, it does really feel like we're going to need to do this maybe twice, right? We're going to need to develop that now so that folks who cannot or will not or whatever move through the document in that way still get the information that they need, right? And that it is accessible to everyone in the way that they can best digest. The last thing I'll say is, and this also relates to some of the public comment, and I think is really important, is, there's the initial section relies heavily on Department of Commerce methodology to create numbers, and then those numbers interact with qualitative data from our region to create typologies that then are forecast into different, temporary housing models. I want to be really clear on two things. One, the numbers are commerce methodology, and that's just really important for me to be really, really clear about, right? And those numbers are derived from HB 1220, and there's I think it's 100, you want another long thing, but there's like a 120-page methodology paper on the Commerce website about how those numbers came to be those numbers. What I want to be clear about, though, is that, for anyone who does implementation work, like a model is a model, and then you have to get it to comport with the real world. And so I don't want folks to see the numbers in the modeling, particularly for, we heard a lot of comments today around THVs, right? The modeling indicates that we are above currently above the level of THV stock called for in the model. That does not mean that the authority is proposing that we cut the number of THVs. It does not mean, that we received money for new non-congregate shelter or micro-modular shelter from Seattle Council this year, right? It is going to be RFP'd out in the, so like, there's nothing about that guide rail that then, dictates a fundamental about implementation. It serves as a scaffold so that, as some other folks highlighted, we are having the discussion about what we need to do inside the right scales and can engage productively in, a real, I think, brass tacks, regional conversation about how to move forward with the types of things that we need. So those are, I think, the main things that we're hearing right now. And I'm heartened to hear from a number of folks, including our provider colleagues, that they are supportive of where we have landed with regard to interpreting the ILA's requirement to use data and talk about the scale of what our region is facing, right? Like, I think that there is a legal requirement to, sort of use data in that way. How we have interpreted that by, hooking our wagon to commerce, so to speak, I think could be scary for some folks. But I think that what we're hearing from people, which is really, really, again, it's personally heartening for me, is that it's good that we're having the conversation at scale, right? That people are able to contend with the reality of it rather than being told it's a much smaller number and then not being able to square that with what progress they do or do not see. So that I think is also some of what we're hearing. And I'm happy to answer any board member questions, but also just want to give you all time to discuss.
Thank you so much, Mark, for sharing that. I want to open it up to all our board members to share the general impressions or if they have questions. Sarah, I see your hand up.
Thanks. Yeah, I appreciated what Mark just said about the being realistic about the cost. That's, in my view, part of the problem with our approach in the past is that we've taken smaller slices of the problem and have tried to sugarcoat what the costs would be. And I also wanted to say there that I think it's really important. What's really different about this plan and gives me hope that it could work is its mindfulness that any effort to significantly impact homelessness needs to intentionally think about how even emergency approaches or short-term approaches partner with long-term solutions. It has to coordinate with output, because if we've got all these people coming in, they're going to need to go somewhere at the end of the day. And so I think I know that some have been critical of the plan for its clear consciousness of that, but to me, that is what makes this plan far more reflective of best practices and best data, and also the most hopeful I've been that it could make an impact, because it's very transparent about the fact that if it's not conscious about those long-term exit points, we're not going to go anywhere. We've always done sort of the term interventions without that consciousness. So to me, that's all part and parcel of being very realistic and not necessarily not necessarily trying to present things the way that they have been in the past. So I wanted to applaud that as well.
Thank you, Sarah. I see Ben's hand up.
Thank you. I apologize for keeping my video off. I was going to talk later, but I think Sarah just summarized a lot of the pro arguments around the plan and how it currently stands. And I just would like to provide a counterpoint to that. And I think there's a lot of things that we agree with. Firstly, that the plan is detailed and that a lot of work went into it, that the plan is ambitious and recognize that this is a large scale problem, whether there's 13,000, 24,000, 50,000, or 60,000 people experiencing homelessness. It's a lot of people, and it's something we have to take seriously. I have issues with the plan as currently drafted at 3 levels. One is the strategic level. I read the plan in its entirety several times. I have struggled to try and understand what it actually is that we're going to do to end homelessness. And my best summary of that is that we are going to go and build a lot of housing, temporary housing, emergency housing, but housing nonetheless, to provide for everybody who needs it. That is an ambitious goal. I am a housing provider in my day job. I support that goal. But the price tag for that in this plan, which is not aggregated anywhere, but if you go through and add up the various numbers, just for the initiatives that have it, you get almost $7 billion. The plan then becomes, we are going to go and get $7 billion. We are going to go build enough housing for everybody, and then we will end homelessness through that route. That is not a plan. We do not have access to $7 billion in the immediate term. Secondly, even if that strategy was correct, we need to ask ourselves, is this a plan that can be implemented? If we follow all the steps, will we achieve the strategy and thus achieve our objectives? And at this point, I can't say the answer to that is yes in this plan. The analysis and the modeling is very unclear. So I don't know whether or not we should have 13.11% medical recuperation or 13.12%. That stuff is very, it's a black box. And so it's impossible for me to say whether those steps are going to lead to the outcomes that we need. It's important to remember this plan is essentially the 4th in a series of milestone reports that our region has collectively done to address our crisis. The first 2 are MIS reports, where Mark was a part of that process. They let out the need for a regional authority. The 3rd was a report called the Regional Action Framework, which laid out the mandate for the RAF and gave, for the RHA, excuse me, and gave a clear set of objectives to the RHA to achieve in its first year and in its first 5 years. And this plan, to my mind at least, was meant to be the implementation plan for how do we achieve those actions in the Regional Action Framework. And you will see in the Regional Action Framework, which if you haven't read it recently, I would suggest dusting it off. It's a fairly well-written report. You will see that our mandate here is to be the crisis management. We are the emergency room. We are not the housing provider. And I absolutely agree that housing is essential, but even more essential is getting our emergency room system functioning in short order so that we can start helping people today, tomorrow. I fundamentally just don't disagree with any of the goals of this plan. But my concern is, even if we were going to go and get $7 billion and then start to build the 20,000 odd housing units that are needed, this would take many, many years. And this would not help the people that are unhoused today. And one thing that I would like to continue to bring us back to is that there are some number, the most recent PIC count showed it above 7,000 people of outdoors today. And we need to have a plan that will help them starting today. We need to think about how many people can we move inside tomorrow, how many on Monday, how many next month, how many the month after that, and focus all of our efforts on that. And I admit that will take funding. And the third point is with what Mark touched on, this plan is almost unreadable. I would challenge anybody to be able to get through this and figure out what it's actually saying. I do think that we need to take a serious step back, reevaluate the strategy, make sure that we have a set of implementable plans to deliver on that strategy, and that we're able to communicate it in a way that can be understandable by ourselves first, as being the responsible implementation board, but also by the public and the rest of our partners. So I'll just sum up by saying thank you so much for this draft. Thank you for all the engagement work that the staff has done to date going through this. But at this point, I think this plan has a long way to go before I would be comfortable signing my name to it.
Thank you, Ben. Others, either in response or your own comments or questions?
Mine is more a comment. I guess I just want to like double click on what Sarah said. I know that we continuously come back to what is going to be the price tag. And I think that if we continue to kind of skirt around like, well, maybe we can negotiate and do this, house this much people for this much, like, yes, the RHA really, like Ben was saying, is the emergency room. But if we don't, like, we need to get people housed now, but if we don't think more upstream about turning off that inflow, we will always be the emergency room. And this emergency room is just going to get bigger with inflation and cost of living. So yes, I mean, 7 billion is a large price tag. I don't think that anyone agrees that reshuffling the chairs with the budget that we have is going to work. It hasn't so far. And I think most of us gave input on the RAF and the mayor's 10-year plan to end homelessness. All of that hasn't worked because I think we continuously skirt around what the true cost of housing our unhoused neighbors is going to be. That doesn't mean we're going to get it, but it also doesn't mean that we shortchange ourselves and pretend that what we have right now is enough to do the work that we were tasked to do. Thank you, Paula.
Raise my own hand to call on myself, and then John, if that's okay. I do want to make a quick point of clarification. When we talk about the overall cost, and Mark, you correct me if I'm wrong, that is inclusive, I think, of our need for permanent housing, including permanent supportive housing, which is that money will not, like the majority of that money will not end up flowing through the RHA. That is, but we are required by the ILA, by the interlocal agreement, to speak to that need, to tell the community how much permanent supportive housing, how much permanent housing is needed as part of our plan, or it's one of our duties as part of the RHA. So I just want to distinguish between the overall cost of helping solve homelessness in this community and what the hope is for a budget for this authority. That's my impression, at least, or my understanding at least.
I just briefly in response, without, I'm not looking at the consolidated tables, but that is correct that there are several costs that are outlined, some permanent, some temporary. None of the permanent cost is anticipated or suggested to come here. What I will also say is that in line with other board members' comments, I feel obligated to note that every report that has been cited today, several of which I wrote, also noted that the cost of solving homelessness in this community, even for temporary things, would be in the billions. That's an old number. And it is alarming to me that we would continue to react to old information as if it is new.
John, I see your hand up.
Yeah, and I will admit I am working my way through the entire report. I did get through the part that had all of the numbers. I've been working my way through the action steps, the first 2-year action steps. I think for me, this is long on. It is the report itself is long on what the problem is, and very short on what we're going to do about it. And especially in the quick term. That is what I'm looking for from this agency. I think it is. If it is a $7 billion plan and that includes permanent low income housing, that's one thing. I can't tell that in the plan, or how many units will be, how many actual units need to be produced at certain levels of AMI. And so I've long had, I was actually talking with someone who is going to run for Bellevue City Council, who reminded me of a meeting that we had a number of years ago when my response was, she was on a different board. My response was, I want you to stay in your lane. Your duty is to do, it's prescribed. It's a narrow prescription. Stay in that lane. Our duty is not necessarily narrow. It is to weigh in on some of the larger issues that approach. But the most important thing is that emergency housing component. And the one thing that I'm struck by in the report was also mentioned by a large number of people in their testimony today. And in the report, it's called micro-modular housing. That can be tiny home villages, but there are other types of modular units that can be available. I'm not a huge fan of having people live in small homes like that. I will take Hope up on its offer to come and take a look at their facility, and if they'll let a one-eyed guy use a hammer to a nail, which is pretty dangerous in and of itself, I'll gladly help them on producing some of it. But I just think I think this has gone as a look for the most expensive answer to homelessness. And I think we have to be mindful of, we do have to be mindful of cost. So in what we ask any government to take a role in, and there are 38 local governments in King County that are, as I understand it, not members yet of this group. Maybe one, actually I'm now going back and wondering whether one city, another city, maybe Burien, signed the ILA. I'm not being very articulate, but I'm more at Ben's level on this.
Thanks, John. I see Michael next.
Yeah, I'll share from a bit different vantage point. I've read the plan. I've discussed it in different settings. The plan has some advantages. It's regional in scope. It's comprehensive. It's been done in a consultative way. It suggests what needs to be done to be staffed up and resourced to accomplish the goals. It's anti-racist. No plan. I have been part of plans since the first plan was implemented, and we were part of that. We were a co-creator of that. And so then you get, I would lend toward building on what already exists as a plan. Mark spoke to specificity. I think to the extent that we can be as specific as possible in certain outcomes to build on the analysis that's already been done. The analysis is really important. There's a lot of discussion around the issue of homelessness, but the analysis is not done as comprehensively as needs to be done. And I know many of you are practitioners and have great experience with that. And so certain areas like vehicle residency, for example, we could dive deeper a little bit and create some outcomes, which can lead to some suggestions around deeper collaborations and may have some funding outcomes as well. So to use one example. So we have to be broad and deep at the same time. The other piece that I will say, just a side comment, is that I don't see the plan as suggesting it's leading to that it's a primary housing provider in the county. I see that there is housing, there's a nexus with permanent supportive housing, there's a nexus with transitional housing and certain types of housing. And one of the gaps in previous plans is actually being able to see that and resource up to do that. So the last point I want to make is that one of the gifts of having a quality staff and a quality plan is the relationships that have been built along the way. I do agree that deepening relationship with the cities within the county and with the state of Washington, as well as the federal government, are extremely important. And they will be decisive in terms of having the resourcing that's necessary. My point of view is that we're primed to move forward. And so I think with the concepts of specificity and relationship building in mind, I think we're heading in the right direction.
Thank you, Michael. I see John's hand. Oh, still up.
Sorry, I thought I'd lowered it. Maybe I
Oh, okay.
raised it again. I apologize. No, I think it's down. I thought it was down.
Okay. Oh, you're down now, John. It's okay. I think this. Oh, sorry. Go ahead, Christopher. You're on mute, Christopher.
Thank you. I'm sorry. In the spirit of sharing, I'm not going to say much original. I really concur with a lot of what was shared, but we've had a number of different opinions about what's going on and perspectives. And I really take a lot of regard with what was shared by Sarah and Paula. I've read the document front to back. It is a little challenging. It does tax you. I think it's telling that the executive summary is 5 pages long, which sounds really opposite the intention. And I think one of the social commentaries on it I would make is that the document does an awful lot of educating and doesn't actually just get to the brass tacks. Here's the fundamental problem. Here's the recommended solutions. I think a ton of the education can be moved to appendixes. And if you got then to the actual core of what it's trying to deliver, it would be a much shorter document, and that references the heck out of appendices. That being said, it does for me lack the fundamental programming cornerstones. It does not say the current housing problem is this, the current number that we're going to be hitting is this, here's our milestones, objectives. You can somewhat extrapolate that out of it, but I struggle to actually get to that final point to know how we can measure it successful. Again, I take a lot of regard in what Sarah and others have said, because being one of the newer board members, I've not seen the previous documents, or if I have, I've read them and I'm not fully connecting the dots. And there is a lot in this one, but it should not be the Where's Waldo of the information. It's felt like an awful lot of work to get there. And I would ask that whatever final document does get created is tighter, or at least has a different kind of an executive summary. On the matter of costing, though, that one I do struggle with, because I recognize what's being shared by the rest of my board members. It's really healthy to know what the real cost is going to be. Totally get it. But you would never build a house knowing that it's going to cost more than you currently have in your checking account and hope that you're going to get enough money to finish construction. And why we would be building a project that is already anchored on the notion that we have to get additional funding, and as opposed to doing it with what dollars we have in front of us and understanding how we can make it work. And then phase two, more money if more money is added. It feels like that is a challenge. It also makes a gating factor for how long it takes before the plan could be actually put into effect. And that to me runs opposite this notion that we're supposed to be timely in the response for the people that are currently experiencing homelessness now. So on balance, as much as I can appreciate so much about what the document does do, I tend to be more on Ben's camp with this one of I'm struggling to understand how it solves, it answers all the questions yet.
Thank you, Christopher. I see Sarah and then Mark.
Thanks. I just wanted to, two things. One is I wanted to sort of point out some questions that I often hear asked by members of the Lived Experience Coalition when I'm participating in meetings and considerations with us, and they come from anti-racist frameworks that where people experiencing homelessness are, you know, at the center of the work and giving that sort of giving the feedback on what the plan should be, what the actions should be. And I just wanted to sort of hold that out too, because I think that that means to me two things. One is that we make sure that the work is centered on people experiencing homelessness. And some of those questions include things like from the perspective of somebody experiencing homelessness, how does this help us? How does this harm us? Who does it benefit? And who does it harm? I think those sorts of questions are ones that lead me to be continue to be very supportive of the overall approach in the plan. But I do think that I agree with Ben and I think with Michael and Chris that it's always a challenge, the accessibility of the work that we do. And that the authority does. And if it's hard for members of our board to read it and understand it, it's going to be exceedingly hard for members of the public to understand and read it. My understanding from expressing that concern to members of the authority is that the authority is actually working on something. So I was going to ask Mark if they know, is there going to be an effort to come up with a simpler translation of what the plan is so that we can address the need for it to be more accessible?
Yeah, thanks, Sarah. That was one of the things that I was mentioning when I was talking about the sort of working with a comms team and some collateral folks to like develop those like, you know, skinnier versions, so to speak, that allow people to, you know, move straight through the document. I'll also note that like we've received very conflicting feedback on the amount of background, to your point, Christopher. So like some people actually want a lot more background. And you know, there's a round of feedback that we actually received that was like, well, this can't be used until you write an entirely new section on the current state of the system separately, and then append that to the beginning, which would be its own 70 pages. So I just want to note that like, because people are entering, I think to Sarah's point, this discussion from all manner of sort of levels of understanding about what we are or are not contending with, that the feedback on how much background is the right amount has been very difficult to summarize. On the budget point, I do feel compelled to note that all of the proposed activities in year one are within the authority's current budget. So there is nothing in the year one proposal that would be outside of what we are currently able to do and could reasonably tackle through our phase system rebid work, which will start shortly. I think the question, you know, is, and I think this is to some degree what Sarah's pointing towards, is, you know, and others, but Sarah just now, is this question of, are we going to orient ourselves towards talking about the scale we need to move towards, or are we just going to reconfigure the current resourcing and say that was the totality of the work. And I will also again note that that is separate from the legislative mandate, which is to talk about the totality of the work, which like that was a requirement. And so, you know, I just want to pull those things apart, because whatever the final shape of the plan is, it will still have to talk about the total, like what all the work is. Like that is a requirement that is on us.
Thank you, Mark.
I
see Ben's next.
Thank you, Mark. I think the way you just framed it is actually really helpful. And let me just note that of the many reports citing billions of dollars in costs, I was the author of at least one of those. So I am aware of how much money needs to be spent to solve our extremely low income housing problem. That the figure doesn't surprise me. What surprises me is that it's baked into our crisis management plan. And I'm happy to hear you say that your year one plan doesn't require that money, and that there's things that we can do in year one without that funding. Because that's what I think we really need to focus on, is what can we do now with funding that we know is secure to take a system that we all know has many issues despite the best intentions of everybody who works in it, to try and bring people inside starting today. And if you have a plan somewhere, if the authority has a plan somewhere to do that in year one, I would very much like to see it. I did not see that anywhere in this document. I think if we could have, in my business career, we often, as a strategy consultant, we often talk about 3 horizons of planning. Horizon 1 being do what you can do today as well as possible. Horizon 2 is to build on that incrementally and grow. And Horizon 3 is to swing big for the fences. If we had a plan that was organized in that way, where we had absolute confidence about delivering excellence and helping people starting today, and then we could scale that over time with incremental funding for our crisis management system, and then we can advocate for the better world that we all want, where everybody can live in comfortable housing that they can afford. I think that would be a plan that I could absolutely support. So I don't think the numbers are necessarily wrong. They directionally feel correct to me. It's just, that's not an emergency room plan. That's like a plan for the whole hospital. And while we do have an obligation to call that out, I think we also have an application to deliver on our department.
Thank you, Ben. You know, Mark, it seems like a lot of the feedback is kind of around the same question of people really wanting to know what is happening next, right? What does this first year really look like? How do we, what concretely is happening? And it sounds like your team is working on that piece. Could you share with us and the community kind of what happens next in terms of timeline, what the team is going to be delivering, how we're going to solicit feedback, et cetera?
Sure. So the currently the plan is posted for public comment until February 8th. That feedback will be collected, matrixed, and will determine sort of what is or is not actionable, and then provide an update to, I believe there's a weekly meeting that's been set up with this board to discuss feedback as it comes in. Folks are welcome to join. There'll also be determination or an explanation about why feedback was considered not actionable, right? So like, for example, there's a lot of feedback that I have reviewed already that is oriented towards behavioral health, and we just don't oversee that system, right? And so we can move towards enhancing service density inside some of our core areas where we operate, but like with regard to inpatient treatment options, like we don't provide those and won't be providing those. So I think that there's some of those delineations will be relatively easy to determine, and then to provide again an update to the board why we're not moving forward with that particular kind of feedback, right? I think that from there, the governing committee will receive a briefing on feedback received on February 16th. And then for really the last half of February and March, we'll be redrafting anything that we are, shifting as a result of this period of engagement. Oh, sorry. At the same time, the sub-regional planning team and Alexis and other members of the staff are also engaging a lot of our provider stakeholders, city stakeholders, people with lived experience, right? Going back to a lot of the groups that shaped the plan and talking through, here's what we are, here's where we are, what do you think? What is there? Do you have any concerns? Are the concerns that you raised adequately represented? Are there things that you don't want to see, et cetera? And so all of that then gets fed forward into any March redrafting work that happens. And then the final document is set for release in April, where both this board and the governing committee will be asked to vote on it. We've really got January 25th, right? So we've got February and March to really go through feedback and redrafting, and then we will take it up for vote in April.
Appreciate that, Mark. I see that we're out of time. Nate, did you want to add something?
Just, real quick, in parallel to what Mark just walked us through too, and in terms of the timeline ahead for ourselves as implementation board members outside of our time this afternoon and in past board meetings, monthly board meetings, to discuss and engage staff about the 5-year plan. You see the revival of our system planning committee, or maybe the launch of the system planning committee that we as a board voted and approved on in April 21 to establish, which includes oversight of the 5-year plan, in addition to COC, in addition to sub-regional planning process, among other duties that we identified or those roles and responsibilities of that committee. So know that I'm looking forward to the continued implementation board engagement and through that committee as well, and leading up to that April timeline, April decision.
Thank you, Nate. I apologize to the crew. We've gone a little bit over our time. For the board members, I think you'll be hearing from Alexis regarding opportunities to engage around that feedback piece, and I strongly encourage you to participate if at all possible. Appreciate the great discussion. To the community, thank you for your weighing in on public comment earlier today. I also encourage you to go to the KCRHA website if you haven't had a chance to look at the current draft and to provide feedback on prioritization. We would greatly appreciate that. The next meeting of the implementation board will be on February 8th of 2023. And I'll ask if there is a motion to adjourn until that time.
Moved.
I see a motion from Nate, and it sounded like a second from Christopher. All those in favor of adjourning, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? All right, we are adjourned. Thank you to staff, board, and community. We'll see you in 2 weeks.